Thank you. Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for coming down and moving down here. Um, I, I've been teaching for 23 years or something like that, since 1989, and I teach science. I've taught in middle school, and currently I'm teaching in high school. And I've been using Plone since I think it's 2004, when version 2.0 just came out after I started looking at it, had heard about it. And so I run a Plone server in my classroom, and also I've had it running in when I started my program at the University of Minnesota, I've had it running in my advisor's office on a donated computer. And lately, last several years, it's been running on the backbone of the Minneapolis Public Schools. And so I've got pretty good access with that. So you can't see the very top of this, but it says that science education most recently has embraced the STEM group. In other words, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so as a science teacher, I need to make sure that I also embrace that in my teaching. And most modern educationalists believe that to really educate somebody in a profession, in an activity, you have to get them to participate in it. You know, you've perhaps heard the expression, a person doesn't learn to swim on the sidewalk, right? And so that means in the classroom, somehow we've got to have communities of scientists or communities of engineers. And I don't mean where they're doing science or they're doing engineering, but instead where they are practicing, where they're being, you know, not just doing, but they're being. The occupation of these two they're knowledge workers. And I'm thinking of the talk this morning that Liz was giving about the sprints, and how in a sprint everybody works together, and as a community they are able to solve problems that no one, you know, that by themselves any one person cannot solve. So that needs to be a component of what happens in the classroom. And on the technical side here, you could say that a community of scientists or community of engineers, they work to create two things simultaneously. They try and create these physical or virtual solutions, you know, these deliverables, perhaps they're called, on the one hand, but to do that, they've got to create these abstract objects, the idea or the concept or the algorithm itself. Those things, of course, can be represented in numerous ways in the physical or virtual world, but it's the creation of the knowledge that really is at the heart of the knowledge age, right? Is the production of knowledge, and I would see that as like problem solving. So looking at engineers, and there are many in the Plone community, and the job of an engineer, we could say, would be to design software, design furniture. There's just innumerable things, right? But basically what they're doing is they're solving specific problems of living, or playing or working. And in the process, they create these objects, technology, we call them, right? So some examples of needs is wondering, okay, how can I get all my information organized and shared and workflowed and things? And Plone is a great answer for that. How could I get to the moon? You know, or how do I make better beer, right? Scientists, we often don't think of scientists as creating objects, but really that's what a scientist does too, is they might create a journal article or a conference presentation, and those are in response to solving problems of understanding. Some examples of problems of understanding could include, why are there so many different kinds of living things on Earth? And that problem, I understand, led to Darwin coming up with developing the theory of evolution. Or the more mundane, why doesn't a glass always break, every time I drop it? That's a problem a kid might feel, right? And all of these different problems can relate to science learning. So if we have in a classroom a group of students who are working to solve some of these problems of understanding, just like in a sprint, we'll be working to solve problems of like interface or implementation or documentation, all those kind of problems, they'll learn a lot. And she was talking about how much you learn when you're involved in a group like that. So that leads to the creation of knowledge. Sometimes a problem of understanding can also often probably lead to the creation of technology. So if we're saying a problem might be, how can we help students solve problems of understanding? Well, the Finnish people created a solution called progressive inquiry, which is an approach to education. And I wasn't sure if I should which side I should put it on. It probably really it's both, yeah. And it is also trying to solve this problem is what keeps me working on this project I call Growing Communities of Scientists, or GCOS for short. And yes, remember, you don't learn to swim on a sidewalk. All right, y'all have probably computers. If you'd like to go to this web page here. So this is my website, and most of it is not visible, to the unauthenticated eye. Although I did, for example, these pictures here, which I just put on a few days ago, but I just re-put them on right now. This only authenticated users can see that, and so that's how I, don't put all this great information out on the web. Keep it as an intranet, I guess. Yeah. So if you'd like to go through some of these links here, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'd like to explain the solutions that I've crafted, trying how to get a classroom of students to be like a community of scientists and create knowledge. One thing that I did was in 2001, I developed this table. The idea being that, okay, people need computers, but they also need to be able to socialize, and they need to be able to use chemicals or whatever. And so the idea of integrating computers into a table, right, trying to make that practical. And that was in 2001. In 2008, I came up with a newer version, but only with the help of a colleague. So together we created this. You can see these boys here are concept mapping with this tool that I used to present recently. Maybe I will just go through them quickly here. These girls here are working on using a model of DNA, which there is absolutely no way they could have ever figured out how to assemble this model, because it's just barely I could understand it with the instructions. So I created a bunch of pictures and step by step, and so I put that on very quickly and easy, put it on my Plone site. They browsed to it, and they could get pictures of like each one of the steps. This was my ELL class, so it's helped me in that also. And another thing is that, of course, in science we don't always need access to computers. So sometimes, it's nice to have them out of the way. Another use is to just show student work. I had this on a web page from a couple years ago. This is, we were studying artificial selection moving into natural selection. And so they did this thing called a triple bubble map, which is like a double bubble, like a Venn diagram, perhaps you've seen, right? And so these are the three things they're comparing. This is common to them all. These things are common to these two, these, you know, right? I'm sorry, your name again, please? Lawrence, yeah. As Lawrence mentioned, a really great tool that Plone has is Plone Glossary, and it's just amazing. You can see here's a page that has a whole bunch of screenshots for websites for learning about evolution. Yep. And this is not rendering properly. This is definitely Nathan's fault. No, I'm just kidding. Nathan helped me quite a bit. This is a content type. This is a really cool thing here. And I wonder if I maybe have to be logged in, but that's okay. So there's supposed to be a V in the middle, going down, starting open at the top, and then down at the bottom. This is the point of the V. And so there's all these places around the V where different fields go. This is an experiment that students just, a team of students just did. They came up with the question, how does adding herbivores and primary consumers to an environment affect the growth of algae in that environment? Okay. And so this graphic organizer, this V, helps them organize their research. And by putting it on a Plone site, then it can be shared with other students. And as you can see, then other students can browse to it, and they can make comments. And these comments aren't really, sophisticated in the sense that, where they're analyzing each other's work. That's what I'd like to aim for. And another thing that, as soon as I can find a way to do it, is I'd like for each one to be able to click on each one of these sections, like on background knowledge, and make it so that you can click and it would have a drop-down dialogue there, a threaded dialogue. And so that people could comment like, oh, boy, I didn't understand this, or, oh, value claim. Please ask questions, by the way, as...
From other colleagues that they talk about Moodle being a application. Have you looked into Moodle, as using Moodle as a education enablement versus doing this way?
Yeah, I've tried to use Moodle. Our district uses Moodle. The University of Minnesota uses Moodle. And I'm never quite able to pin my, put my finger on exactly the reason why, but the experience of using Moodle is a little bit like fingernails on a blackboard. I don't know what it is about it, but does anybody here uses Moodle?
So I've used Moodle in this course because that I'm co-teaching with other faculty, and they've been using Moodle before, and they're very excited about Moodle. The reason why they're so excited is because it allows a seemingly trivial reorganization of content that just makes it so much easier to kind of like grade what the students are saying. So basically each student answers a certain question, and then when you want to grade the quality of the answers, you don't want to go through all the answers from one student and then go to the next. You want to have question one, and then have all the students lined up.
Absolutely.
And this is what Moodle basically does. So the students enter stuff in one way, so they answer one question after another, but then when I look at it, I can say, give me all the answers for question number 7. And then I get a long list of answers for question number 7. I can compare what the students are saying, and it's like very easy to do that. And in addition, I can have standardized feedback, which is such that I can just say, here are my phrases about like for recurring errors or subtleties that I might want to point out. I just create a phrase, and then I'm adding this phrase as feedback to specific answers without having to type it again. So, and that's cool.
It's very powerful.
Other than that, I would love to see it in Plone.
Yeah.
But but that takes a little bit more than just a little bit of messing with dexterity, because you would need to generate the content types and then behind the scenes do this reorganization somehow.
That'd be a form gen thing, wouldn't it?
Well, you can add the questions as forms, I suppose, but then something needs to reorganize the content in the back end so that it presents this new view. But, yeah.
I think that's, you're on the right track. I actually think, having played with some of this stuff for something else, that would be an easy way to do it. If you wanted to do it in Plone, I would actually do a folder. In each question would be a content item in the folder, and then each student you'd somehow have student test, and then you would just do a collection or something. Question 1 collection, question 2 collection. I mean, it's already in there. You'd have to think about how to do it. That said, Moodle is designed for handling class stuff. Plone in and of itself isn't. Has anybody here, speaking of that, gotten Plone what's it called, plone.edu working? Because various times I've tried to install part of it on the site, and I've never got it functioning with everything else.
What do you mean by saying Moodle is for class stuff? And
It's designed.
What does it need to do for class stuff that Plone wouldn't?
Plone could be made to do it, but we don't have built into Plone the porting grades that are only available to a certain person. If I grade something and this was created by so-and-so, can it be dumped directly into a grade sheet? Things like that are part of Moodle. They're part of D2L. They're part of Blackboard, or WebCT, or whatever it used to be called. I don't know if it still
Right.
exists.
Right. WebCT,
Doesn't?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think Blackboard bought them out, didn't they? Not sure, did they? Yeah.
Well, my feeling is, well, you can actually build anything with Plone probably, right? So it's a lower level. So the level, the conundrum that I always run into, should I use a lower level so that I can be more flexible, do my own thing, versus utilizing some of the higher level end product. Moodle could be an example of that. That says it has a wide adoption. A lot of other institutions use it. It's well known in the education field. Why would I start another initiative that could make overlap and may confuse people?
Right.
Unless there's a compelling reason, you know. So I always struggle with that, right?
And
A choice of, do you do your own thing using Plone? Frankly, you can build anything with Plone probably. So that's.
yeah, and I've thought about that too, and I think that, got this handy thing here, and I was thinking, no, we don't want to try and go for the same thing that Moodle does, because they do it really well, except for that. I haven't used Moodle 2, and which I think is a big improvement on Moodle 1 point whatever. So, but what I would like to see, actually the place I would like to see Plone go is like, I don't know if it's knowledge management or knowledge creation tools. I'd like to see, you know how a lot of stuff is kind of linear, and I would like to see, you know, two-dimensionality added to things. Like here is, let's see. All right, so this is, you recognize this here. I'll try not to show it too much. This is WordPress, right? And a programmer in Finland who actually originally made the original version of the V that Nathan so nicely updated and improved. They are currently making an add-on to WordPress. And this add-on is a way for students to have conversations. Let's see. Okay. So you can see the conversation as a thread. Okay, the threaded view, which was more the original one, where students like, oh, okay, so Brittany said, first of all, the question was, or the problem was, it is said that every glass of water that you drink contains at least one molecule peed out by a dinosaur, right? And so, you know, like here, Nick asked a question, if this is true, does it affect us at all? Are there any negative health effects? Can it be avoided? You know, and he later goes on to answer it, and Muhyiddin then furthers that. I don't think there is any negative health effects because the water cycle is very effective in cleaning water, right? And so when Nick posted this, his reply, he had to say that this is a problem. He had to before it would appear, he had to say, okay, well, this is a problem. And when he posted this, he had to say, well, this is a scientific explanation, and there's rules, right? You have to have a source in it. There's also, like Muhyiddin here, he posted a my explanation, where you don't need any backup. You can just say, hey, this is what I think, and you know, whatever you think, yeah. So, and then you can also see it as a map, which they're just, bless you, they're just coming out with this view right now. Let's see. And so this shows in a more visual way the conversation and the threads that are going on. And then, yeah, okay, so Brittany asks, wouldn't the pee have evaporated already? You know, and then Ashley says, ooh, we drink pee, right? And that's part of it, you know, I mean, they're scientists, right? They're a community, we want it authentic, you know, so they need to really, they need to care about it, they need to engage in it. So then Ashley also says, so everything that pees outside and is evaporated, then rained down, is drunk by someone? Nick here, even when water is evaporated, it is still water, or urine in this case. It's just a different form of water, urine. You know, and you know, that's not true, right? But, or not completely true, but that's the idea, is that as they engage it, they try and argue with each other. They try and post better ideas, that design approach to improving thinking. All right. So, I'm sorry. How do I see it? Or have I seen it?
Yeah, how do you visually see where they eventually end up with that discussion?
That's a wonderful, I don't know if that's the $10,000 or the $20,000 question. If I want to try and analyze, so if you have a community of people trying to be scientists, right? How do you, increasing in expertise, okay? How do you measure that growth in expertise? What do you think? How could you, okay, we got a group of people where, okay, so, you work with programmers, right?
Right.
Okay, so how do you tell that they're getting better? How do you know that this person has more expertise now than they did a year ago? What indicators would you look for?
Less regressions, maybe more output.
I face the same problem. So how do I measure the expertise of my students?
I try to rephrase her question a little bit. My thought was she was asking a question as this conversation have these different threads. It was, how do you know there is a conclusion? There is an agreement.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Not a broad question like what you said about how do
Okay.
you know this thing actually causes improvement.
Okay.
This is, I think the question really is just that you have all these conversations going on. How do you know there's a conclusion, that there's an end point that you can say, all right, this is more or less, is there some consensus, or there's a place where you say, I cannot agree, but we agree to disagree?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of, finishing of the thread. It's
there-
a general problem in not just this kind of conversation, really, even any kind of community conversations, on a forum even. Right?
Okay. So you're saying, how do I or how do they know that they've come to answer the question? Well, people have to kind of keep on top of what the community is saying. And when they get to the point they want to post what's called a summary post. And it tries to take into account what other people have said and summarize. So here's what Nick said. The general idea here seems to be that rather than scientists actually analyzing every molecule of water, they just see that we've had the same water on Earth for its entire existence. So most of the water, if not all of it, was urinated out by dinosaurs. All the water urinated, that would be impressive. At some point. Most of us seem to agree that this statement is true because our water is millions of years old and we've never received new water. So he's bringing into account the statistical thing a little bit and the water cycle. And my goal as an educator and what the curriculum said my students need to learn is they need to learn about nutrient cycles, including water cycles and some of those things. So yeah. And how do they know if it's right? A student of mine came up to me and he said, I said, oh, so what do you think about it? I often do. And he said, I think it's kind of good, but I kind of don't like it. And I said, well, why is that? He said, well, we don't know if it's right. And students are very used to that, being, knowing what's right. And however, in the real world, sometimes there is no right. And scientists don't know if something's right. It's a design field. It's like, oh, this feels good, or oh, it needs to be improved. Oh, I've done these experiments to show it. Oh, here's my argument and based on some evidence. We try and find ways to feel confident about a conclusion, its validity. But once again, it's the idea is that students experience that. And as they're doing this, it's not like they have to make it all. They're reading books and they're doing simulations and they're asking me for answers, and I try and explain it, but it's always generated from them. So it's got to be their own, and they have to go through the feeling like, is it done?
David, in this process, how did it come about that Nicholas was the one that wrote a summary and not somebody else? Was there is there workflow there that the team decided, or
that would,
he was brave enough to say, I'll summarize how it?
Yeah, he was brave enough. Okay. Yeah, and you can see he was very present in this discussion. We had 8 discussions. I chose 8 problems that corresponded to the standards in the curriculum. Scientists figure that when a huge meteorite hit the Gulf of Mexico 65 million years, a huge cloud of dust it sent up, and that encircled the world, ended the age of dinosaurs and helped start the age of mammals. Usually things don't change too much in an ecosystem. For example, the population of rabbits usually stays about the same, even though they can reproduce like crazy, right? And so each one of these, addresses something in the curriculum, right? And Nick likes to make summaries. He's good at it. I'm not that good, but he's good at it. And it's a community thing too. Other people are good at making questions. Other people keep us happy. Make jokes and things like that. But as long as it's on topic, I feel like you want to create a community where people can really feel like they're participating. Bless you.
What we're looking at, this tool is not based on Plone. This one that you should
This
show.
is an add-on that's an add-on for WordPress. I would love to see, actually, I'm kind of working with Nathan a little bit and I'm trying to find a grant to help create or perhaps adapt this so that it can be added onto Plone. I would love to see Plone have a suite of like concept mapping tools or visual representation tools. Is that things other people been thinking about?
Well,
about
I
Plone?
myself can certainly see the usefulness of this. Because in community conversations, you can start a conversation about any topic.
Right.
You can have people chime in and state it this way, and then there's somebody comes up and brave enough to say, I'll summarize it. I assume there's some challenge even to summary. Somebody says, I sort of disagree with your summary. But that, at least there's a workflow to it. There's somewhat of a conclusion, a consensus.
Yep.
There's a little closure, which is, I think, is good, always good, right?
And I'm hoping with like XXMP, maybe we could get some kind of simultaneous. I know that there's a tool, the CMAP tools. Actually, people can, like, you can have 5, 10 people online simultaneously working on the same map. And when they click on a bubble, it will put their name, their username will, and so you can be looking at the page, and all these bubbles are moving around at the same time. And it's really exciting being part of a conversation like that. So,
That brings up just sort of an educational question. I look at the kind of conversation they're having here, and I was looking at the dates, the period of time over which it happened. Some of that was good because it looked like they went out and did some research interim, which is what you want them to do. But some of it also looks to me like, what would have happened if I just sat them down in the classroom for 15 minutes?
for 15 minutes?
For 15 minutes, would we
Yeah.
have gotten the same place more efficiently for everybody?
Well, when you have a community of scientists, you have to have like journal articles. You have to have some physical representation, something that exists more than a conversation. Because yeah, well, some people could leap and that discussion would be like that maybe in 15 minutes. But it would be here, then it would be gone. And you know, maybe only 3 people participate in that. And what this allows is each of these represents like an object. And so a person can interact with that object and readdress it, rethink it. You know, when you have more knowledge, you understand a problem in a different way. And so as we are studying, you know, this is, I think there was maybe 5 times when we participated in this for like 20 minutes each or something like that. And so maybe we work on it one day and then we do a simulation activity and this and reading and who knows, and then they do it again. And the idea is each time they readdress it, they rethink it really.
Okay, so you actually do have to sort of, it's not just sitting out there. You really do have to embed it in what you're expecting the students to do. Because I guess that's sort of, I'm thinking about how I would use something like this. And if you just put it out there, you got to have some way of encouraging them to take part in it. One of the things that's very disappointing about any kind of mailing list, discussion list, threads I set up in any tool I've ever used is that getting students to really participate and make good use of them and get things out of it is hard. So basically, this is almost part of the assignment. They do something, do a bunch of things. Now I want you to go back and readdress what's been
Right.
discussed already.
And that's almost impossible to get that done unless you have some kind of authentic discussion, you know, where people feel safe in giving a my explanation and that their my explanations are valued. You know, I avoid things like you have to have 12 posts or you have to have so many words because then people view it as a task. And as soon as it's viewed as a task as opposed to knowledge creation, they come at it from a different angle. And then it's just like, okay, so to get my grade, I need to do this. And that was part of the difficulty I was talking about grading, you know, how to measure a person's expertise, you know, trying to find ways to do it. And one thing that makes this really cool too, this particular threaded discussion tool, is I've participated, you know, in classes with thread discussions, and you go there because you have to have so many words, and you got to post every so often, and then everybody posts at the end of the deadline, or, you know, and it's not like a building thing, but, and also we kind of meander a little bit. This really makes it, you know, by having to say, okay, this is a question I'm asking, and it's color-coded, as a matter of fact, and people can see, oh, he's got a question there. Oh, I can answer that. Oh, and I can answer it in one of 2 ways. I can use authoritative resources, or I can just wing it, and this is what I think. And so, you know, as we say in the biz, it scaffolds a community to a higher level of expertise than any of them could have by themselves.
Along the same line then, have you had any experience using something like Stack Overflow, which of course in the programming community is a way
Huge.
is a,
But
is a
only
way
as
of getting
only
questions
as a
and
browser
answers.
to solve all my Plone problems. But not just Plone, but also Ubuntu and
But
WordPress and
you know,
everything.
it's
yeah.
almost this.
Yeah, and that is a huge improvement over like the mailing lists and things like that. So you know, I'm saying Stack Overflow is. Yeah. So.
So you had. I'd like to make a summary based on just sort of what we've
Please,
been
and
saying.
actually, if we could all log in here.
I think it's
and make a
appropriate since
summary.
we've been discussing this.
Yeah.
I think the important thing I'm hearing from this, from the perspective of people developing things for educators to use, and also as an educator, it's important not to be reinventing the wheel. And Plone is a really good tool for special use things, but there are lots of things out there that you can use instead for that already exist for things. But when you need something special that does unusual things, most of these other kinds of web-based and content management tools are not adaptable enough. I mean, that's certainly been my experience.
Thank you.
So I don't have to add to the summary. I have way too many questions.
That'd
so-
be the yellow posts, right?
Yeah, so 2 yellow posts. First of all, does anyone know a Plone product that does a Stack Overflow equivalent? Does that exist? I mean, I can turn on the discussion button, that's nice, but there's some rating for the answer or the quality of the answer or something like that.
Yeah, there's the thumbs rating as well.
Mhm.
That's not on the comment though.
What?
It's just on the like, piece of content.
Yeah, but you can make a piece of content that's a page, right? And then you can rate it thumbs up, thumbs down, and you sort by the rating.
Yeah, but saying like, if people comment on it, you want to upvote and downvote the comments.
On the comments.
Yeah, I don't know anything like that,
Uh-huh.
but we could sure build one.
How much work would it be to build that? Is that like a trivial addition, or is this a major Plone infrastructure whatever?
How crazy the scope is.
To get it to look like Stack Overflow, for example.
Stack Overflow has so many other social aspects going on, whole karma, and like, there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Sure,
Not just upvote, downvote.
Yeah.
Upvote, downvote, sort of for
But with
us, it was just a rating thing, almost like the average rating on a commercial site of things for sale,
Yeah.
right?
so
5 stars, 4 stars.
let's do a slight twist to kind of like make it unique and make whatever Plone does a unique thing. In the educational context, there are 2 votes that are of interest. One is the popular vote, which is just count the ups and downs of students and, well, sure, make it unique so that hitting the button several times doesn't, I don't know, make cheating possible. But then the other one is the experts vote. Because in science education, as you're well aware, if all the students think one thing, that doesn't make it right. So,
Stack Overflow does with if you have lots of points, you get taken more seriously.
you mean like, yeah, but
That would be a cool way to do it, actually. And the way you get points, too, is when people respect your answer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's,
And that would
So-
almost
so
a
that's-
measurement of expertise.
So that's
That's
is
a
that
really
an-
cool idea, actually.
Is that an integrated algorithm behind the scenes in Stack Overflow? Because
yeah, it has to be.
right, because for me, if I look at Stack Overflow, I see a rating for the answer, but to me, it's not transparent whether this is a popularity thing or whether this is an expert thing. Because you will see situations, at least in science, occasionally, where the 2 diverge. You get lots of students would vote something, but actually go sit down, do the math, and it's something else. And in that case, I think it will be good and also instructional for the students to kind of like see, okay, so this is the popular vote, and this will be the well, science-based
That would-
argument.
Like, and that's not the trivial solution to it. That's like,
Okay. So,
requires a lot of thought and time.
I mean, it would also require a lot of thought, I think, in the design specification, because, like, well, what would we want it to look like? Never mind the programming, but, yeah.
And something that I'm trying to think of is, I want some really great products, and to do that, you got to get more than just the Plone community involved. You need other CMSs involved. So can you make like this? Okay, this is an add-on. I want to work with Tarmo to see if, and with Nathan to see if it can be ported to Plone. And so can you construct things in such a way that they can, with some API or something, they can be hooked onto, WordPress or Drupal if they have those capabilities. I don't think WordPress has workflow, does it?
Very minimalistic.
Yeah. So I mean, there's certain things that couldn't be done, but still.
But I think you talk about service that everybody can call to say, here's this piece of content, call this service, it follows certain algorithm, and it comes back with the answer. That will require a larger community conversation about standardizing what the API is,
Mm-hmm.
what is the content you evaluate, what fields are required, and all that,
Mm-hmm.
and what algorithms you use.
I would guess that doing that in such a way that it's easy to have something like that move from one content management platform to another one is way too complicated. I would like focus on where get something really excellent developed in Plone, and then let the other communities worry about how to port that.
Well, that's what I would do, is I would bring them, other people in other communities, to help Nathan or whomever to develop this product. And then each person could develop their own port to their own CMS. And then bring in their own capabilities that their CMS brings into it. And I think, Plone would win out because it's beautiful, basically.
So I have a slightly less Plone-y question about all this. If students participate in this, how do you grade them? Because
Back to the question I was trying to avoid earlier, which actually wasn't even asked.
because it's just such a difficult
Right.
problem in education, and I don't know, to some degree maybe these automated tools could help make the task of grading easier to some extent. But then, I mean, what I'm told also is that, at least at university, you need to tell students up front what's the grading scheme. And
Right. The task management, basically. That they need to be able to manage the task of it as well as the learning. And that, that's a good question. This actually provides a couple of interesting tools, but as, I don't remember his name, who was speaking up here 2 times, no, maybe next door, from Mexico, he was talking about DataViz. And I would love to see tools built into Plone that can take data and can visualize it, that can create some kind of visual summary of participation, in something like this. So, for example, here, okay, so here's one way of seeing, who's participating, right? And Najma only had 1 comment in this one. Nick had 6. Won't be seeing them again. Can have the names. So, yeah, like, how do I grade? You can grade on simple things like, are they able to make a good question? Are they able to make a good scientific explanation or source-based explanation that I'm moving to?
I believe you're getting into really deep topic. Is artificial intelligence a little bit? Because there's some.
Haven't even
it's
gotten
getting
that
into
far yet.
In other words, some expert will look at these answers, even consider, kind of rate the general format of what constitutes a better answer than another. And then you train the machine. There's a machine back end that once you train it, it gets to understand, it generates its own rules, actually. That says, because there's a human person that's trained and qualifies certain response to be good or not good. In fact, I think Google is working on those things, by the way.
Right.
Deeper artificial intelligence kind of technology
Mm-hmm.
that teach kind of, you don't even have to know the rules. The machine itself generates the rule because the humans have using their own intuition, whatever it is,
Right.
and rated certain
That-
rules, certain,
That intuition thing is huge in expertise.
and therefore the machine just basically generate the rules. You know, from you train the machine, they learn better. So you don't even know actually what rules the machine uses. Okay, so it's really
Right.
there's a learning portion of the engine. Okay, so
There's-
I'm not sure it's a Plone problem. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You know, there's
But
an
it's a-
artificial intelligence kind of problem. I
Right,
think.
and it's interesting, and that's the cool thing. You bring people together, and they start coming up with ideas that I'd never even thought about that, you know, and
people
it
are
can
working on
generate
it.
somewhat, you know, and actually it got me thinking about, okay, so, you know, you could write some very simple things, you know, as a way to visualize the data. But anyways, time is up here. Time was up 2 minutes ago, and I appreciate your time, and you know, and I'm sure that more than one of you has helped me online before, in the chat rooms and in the Plone setup, so on, and so I just want to thank you for that too.